I think we're going to be able to start. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. My name is Maxime Benvenuto. I am a design researcher based in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, and I am one of the organizer of this event, and I will also be the moderator. This webinar is organized by Foundation We Are, of which I am one of the co-founders, and Free Press Unlimited, which is an NGO based in Amsterdam supporting freedom of press across the world. Yes, for this webinar. My name is Maxime Benvenuto. I am just a little thing. I have a feedback in my ears. If Bernard can look at the technical side. Okay, it seems to be fixed. Sorry for this. To give you a little bit of context for those of you in the audience who might not be designers, right now in the Netherlands, it is the Dutch Design Week, meaning that all designers are invited to present how they work, what they do all week long. And this event is based in that context. And what we do through our foundation, we are a group of designers and architects, and essentially we work on societal issues through collaborative means. So therefore, like this event in collaboration with Free Press Unlimited is grounded in this. And the collaboration with Free Press Unlimited is actually quite short because we're really at the beginning for now. So for the past weeks, what happened is that there have been some discussions going on between some journalists in Latin America and Eastern Europe, together with designers, to see how design and journalism can support each other. So the aim is to have this process go on after Dutch Design Week and to transform into actual projects. Now, to contextualize a little bit more, why design and journalism? Because that doesn't seem obvious at first. So to give a bit of background on design as a field, it is a field that went through quite some transformation in the past decades, especially with the rise of the Anthropocene. We have new domains and new practices that emerged, such as design research, critical design, or speculative design, which all have in common that these practices try to make sense of the topic they deal with, which is quite something different with the traditional approach of design, of making furnitures or spaces. So then in that context, why design and journalism? There is actually a lot that they have to give to each other because, for instance, if we look at journalism, it is a key element of democratic life. Yet it has been struggling through multiple crises in the past year. And to only talk about the context in Europe for now, we can think about economical crisis, but also about the digital revolution to which many medias had struggles to adapt. While on the other hand, we have those new practices in the design field, which are looking for ways to engage with society and with meaning. And in that sense, when the two meet, it is actually quite a good combination. So through this event, to just give you a little bit of the structure, we will first have an introduction from Danielle Arets, who works at the Fontes for Journalism in Tilburg in the Netherlands and at the Design Academy Eindhoven, also in the Netherlands. Then we will have some 3 journalists, one from Nicaragua, one from, sorry, well, 2 journalists from Latin America, I'm sorry, and one from Moldova, who will explain the context in which they work. And then we will have 3 designers who will come in to explain a bit the discussion that have been going on in the past weeks. After that, we will open towards a discussion where the audience can also ask questions via the chat if they want to engage. But for now, I will let the word to Danielle Arets, who will tell more about design and journalism. I don't know if you started to speak, Danielle, but you are muted.
Yeah, I was just uploading my presentation. I hope you can see it. Yeah, I see some nodding. Okay, so thanks for having me here. And it was a great pleasure meeting you all in the previous sessions we had to prepare for this event. That was really inspiring. And thanks for the introduction already, Maxime. I indeed work at Fontes School of Journalism in Tilburg, where I'm heading a research lab on journalism and innovation. And I'm also a design researcher in Design Academy Eindhoven. So it will not surprise you that I think the 2 disciplines can really learn a lot from each other, actually. And for this talk and this event specifically, I think we deal mainly with what journalists can learn from designers. As you mentioned already, Maxime, we see that journalists are facing many crises. There is, of course, the economic and technical challenges that they're dealing with, but also COVID is causing a lot of challenges nowadays. On the one hand, we see that luckily, a lot of people start to pay for the news again because they really feel they need trustworthy information and they're going to the traditional news outlets again. So that's good news. But on the other hand, we see that also democracy and human rights in many countries are under threat. And this is a recent report from the Freedom House who published that over 80 countries are under threat nowadays. And that really concerns me. And I think a lot of the speakers this afternoon face these challenges already. And also in the Netherlands, we have to deal with that. Last week, the biggest news outlet, the NOS, had to remove their logos from their satellite cars. You see that in the right image. And well, that really scares me if we already have to sort of get rid of media outlet of remove logos from satellite cars, then we're really facing a lot of troubles nowadays. And I think we need design researchers to help us redesigning the journalistic practice. And within our research lab, we focus on 3 overarching themes. One is focused on the digital and ethical savviness of journalism. It will be no surprise that we need to update journalistic skills when it comes to verifying deep fakes, for instance, but also on being a smart torn in a digital side when it comes to all the questions and challenges in our data-driven society. So we really need to update these skills. And what I notice in my practice is that often the designers are much better in this than a lot of journalists, as they are not afraid of technology. They love to tinker with new tools, with new programs, and they often excel in this. So that's really helpful to invite designers in, becoming more digital literate, so to say. The second program that we look at is what we call the UX journalism, which is obviously a term that we borrow from design, UX design, which means that in journalism, we need to be more user-centered and involve users in every part of the journalistic cycle and every a part of the process, meaning the research process, but also co-creating articles with users and publishing it, distributing information through the audience. But with that come a lot of challenges as well, because not everyone that would like to team up with journalists has the best intentions. So we often see also people, what we call dark participants, entering the journalistic field, and that's not making our life easier. So
Daniela,
that's also a challenge. Yeah, of course.
Can you maybe just put your presentation in full screen?
Oh, it's
so that
not
it's
full screen.
easier.
Yeah, thanks a lot for mentioning it.
Thank you.
And the final research track has to deal with redesigning new roles and practices and also perceptions. And with that, designers can be truly helpful. And I will give a short example of each research track. When it comes to digital and ethical savvy journalism, we team up with Bellingcat, the research collective that I think most of you all know. Bellingcat is known from its open source intelligence, and we organized quite a lot of boot camps together with Bellingcat, where designers and journalists both participate in. And what we see is that during these boot camps, not only we can learn a lot in regards to these online research tools, but also in collaborating, we can find new ways of storytelling. And an example of a project we did with Bellingcat last year is we did research on the shooting incident that happened on March 18th last year in the Netherlands, in Utrecht, the city where I live in. And it was a shooting incident in the tram, and the city completely panicked because 3 people were killed, 7 people were injured, and the shooting started in the morning, and it took almost the entire day to get rid of the shooter, to find him. And there was a lot of panic, and a lot of people were disseminating messages online, but also a lot of trolls, as we call them, people that didn't verify their information, but were just mentioning that there were multiple shooters, that a school was under attack. So everyone was everyone was terrified. And what we did during this bootcamp is making a reconstruction, just putting everything on a timeline, minute by minute. And by doing that, we really started to unfold the story and understand better what truly happened, of what actually happened that day. And I think projects like this are really helpful, not to create new stories, but better understand how the communication channels are distributed and how communication experts, journalists, but also designers can collaborate in this. So this is just one example. When it comes to this UX journalism, I think it's, a great example of this is The Correspondent, a Dutch outlet, which is now also in English. And its mission is not to do journalism for you, but really with you. So they put a lot of effort in engaging their audience in the journalistic process. And they even have a conversation editor, which I think is a really nice way of doing this. And a project we did on UX journalism that might be nice to tell you is also a project we did last year, running up to the elections, where we teamed up with an ICT company, a media outlet, and the designers, Cream on Chrome, who will present later on. And this project was titled Choose Facts. And what we did is we created a mashup website of the largest cities in the Netherlands, 5 cities. And all the news around the elections was published on this website. And we invited a couple of experts, academic experts with really deep expertise on specific issues that were very prominent on the agenda during the elections, like, for instance, the GDPR legislation. And these experts were invited to help the journalist in verifying information, but also adding new knowledge, giving them additional resources and appointing them to different experts or different sources. And this was really helpful. This collaboration was fruitful on both sides. The academics loved it because they could disseminate their knowledge in a very practical manner. And the journalists were really grateful for the help that was given. So that was super interesting, but it was also very time consuming to do this. And by means of this project, we actually designed a tool that's called the Journalist Navigator that is doing precisely this. The tool is a plugin that any journalist could use. It's a plugin in a Word file. And while writing an article, for instance, in this case, on data and privacy, journalists will get advices on experts, academic experts, that could be consulted to help them with additional information on these topics. And this tool is actually really helpful. One of the largest news outlets in the Netherlands is now experimenting with this tool because it not only gives really good advices on experts, and it's also location specific. So if you write this article in Eindhoven, you will get different results than if you write the article in Amsterdam. And because of this, it's also helping to make the journalistic landscape a bit more diverse, because we often notice that a lot of journalists always consult the same experts, which is actually the experts that comes first in the Google research, the first hits. And this tool helps us to also find other experts. So that's, I think, a nice example. And this tool, we could never have invented this tool without doing proper design research. And I think it's a nice example of how journalists and designers can team up. The final example on redesigning roles and practices is that we have a so-called artist in residency in the School of Journalism, and we call that the Werkplaats. Maxime, who was just introducing this lecture, did an artist in residency, and also Martina and Jonas, who will present later on, did a research of such a residency. And what I notice is that by these very short-term research projects, we can learn a great deal as journalists by not only the projects that the research itself, but also the tools and methods that design researchers use. For instance, one of the researchers that is currently working in our lab is doing research on VR technologies and how by means of that you can learn more about empathic ways of interviewing. And I think journalists can learn a lot from that, doing different ways of using different ways of storytelling, but also different ways of interviewing. And I think Martina and Jonas will tell more about the research they did on 4-dimensional news, which was which is still a great project, and we will continue working together. And I think all these projects show that, well, we can learn a lot by collaborating, and I'm really looking forward to the presentations that we will be having today. So I will conclude with this, and I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Now, in order just to contextualize a little bit the coming talks of the journalist, I would like to invite you, Mira Chowdhury, to tell a little bit about Free Press Unlimited, and especially about the VMIS project and what you're working on there.
Thank you very much, Maxime. And great that you all are joining us on this October Sunday. And wonderful to hear what's happening in Fontys School of Journalism in Tilburg, Danielle, because I studied there almost 20 years ago, and lots of exciting new things are happening. Sounds very interesting, and I hope we can collaborate indeed a bit more. So my name is Mira Chowdhury. I work for Free Press Unlimited already for 7 years. As Maxime already said in the introduction, we are based in Amsterdam, but we work around 40 countries in the world, mostly with local partners who mainly consist of independent media outlets, such as the one that you will meet later on in this talk. Yes, so Free Press Unlimited, I think the name says it already. We believe in making quality information available for everyone, so that people can make informed decisions. Well, we have lots of projects and programs, but the one that is most important for this talk is called VMIS, which started in 2019. And VMIS stands for Viable Media for Empowered Societies. In VMIS, we are working together with 2 regions that are usually not necessarily so well connected or so easily connected. There are 8 media outlets participating, and 3 of them are from Central America, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala. And then we have 5 who are in Eastern Europe, and those are in Armenia, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And due to their groundbreaking reporting and pro-democracy stance, as Danielle already said, which is very much under pressure at the moment, we really see that these media outlets are under increased political and economic pressure in various levels of urgency, but it's deteriorating everywhere. And the risks they run for their safety, but also for their freedom to actually do their work and report on what's happening in their countries, we felt that it would be very interesting to connect them with each other. So to strengthen their position in society and to share experience, knowledge, and content with each other, we've started up this project with a rather unusual collaboration. And we've already experienced quite some interesting collaborations and mixing between the different countries and between the different regions, and also between the different functions within the media outlets. I guess everyone who is participating will give some good examples of that, so I won't go into this. But one of the main reasons that we also wanted to have more collaboration is to see how it would be possible to repackage kind of traditional journalism work. So written stories, turning them into multimedia packages or turning them into different types of enticing ways to catch the audience attention. And I think design is extremely important in that. So I'm very excited to have this collaboration with the Dutch Design Week starting, and I very much look forward to what will come out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mira. Then I would like, Carlos was supposed to join us, but unfortunately he couldn't get a good enough connection. So we pre-recorded his intervention just in case on Friday. Just to introduce briefly, Carlos Salamanca is from El Salvador, and he works for the news outlet El Faro, which is essentially online. And we will now play his video, but probably in the end, one of his colleagues, Daniela Reyes, will probably join us to join the conversation.
Which is a media outlet. Hello, my name is Carlos Salamanca. I'm not a journalist, neither a designer. I work as a community engagement manager and projects coordinator in El Faro, which is a media outlet, a Salvadorian media outlet that was born in 1998. Just to give you a perspective, we are the first native digital media outlet in Latin America. We were even born before Google. We weren't as visionary as you may be thinking right now. We just didn't have money to put a print media when we were born. And since that, as internet has exploded and social media have uprised a lot, we lost the interest of doing a print media and we stayed on internet. The context where we do journalism is pretty adverse and has become more adverse for the last year. Last 3 months, El Faro has been under attack in terms of aggressive use of the power of the government to accuse journalists of El Faro and other independent media. For example, we are currently under an aggressive audit of the Ministry of Finances that is aiming to to get all the financial and accountability information of 4 fiscal years, which may be normal, but last month it has started with more aggressive petitions that we think that are not related with fiscal issues. For example, the names and last names of the people who are members of our community. We have given the receipts and the invoices, but we have denied to deliver, to submit their names, because we think the interest is another rather than look for the fiscal interest of El Salvador. And other things like that. So doing independent journalism in countries like El Salvador and other Central American countries is kind of risk, and it's very important because people tend to be very polarized and misinformed because of how fake news or propaganda information is spread in social media, and may make them confused about what things are real or not. And since the president and his government have been attacking a lot El Faro, like trying to affect our credibility, it's been very challenging to how to keep dealing with this, and at the same time doing what we have learned to do for 22 years, which is being a watchdog of the power and looking and exposing the wrongdoing in the government. And in terms of how we have used social design, or what are the challenges for us to have a better distribution strategy of our content and of our investigations, I want to share some examples of things that we have done, but as I want to emphasize that these things have been very exceptional, and we think that we could be doing a lot of projects like this in order to impact and get to new audiences who may not be just engaging with our content in terms of reading long-form journalism or in-depth text. So I will share my screen just to show you the first example. Which is in 2019, we published that a former president of El Salvador, the first president of the left-wing party that came to power in 2009, whose name is Mauricio Funes, used a lot of millions of public funds for private purposes and luxury purchases for he and his family. Currently, he is being sought by the justice of El Salvador, but he's currently under asylum in Nicaragua, in the regime of Ortega. And we published this story because our journalists got get access to original documentation that proved that employees from the presidential house had made payments of the receipts of his credit card, and sometimes very immediately after he made purchases in another country, a payment was made in cash by a presidential employee. So the normal thing that we would have done would have been just to make a long-form text explaining, having scanned the receipts and explaining the story with the photograph, etc. But we decided that this was a big story that needed to be told in other narratives as well. So this will be the first example where the graphics that explain how during between 2009 and 2014 he spent money have a narration of a journalist who is explaining and telling people how to understand the movement of the graphic. We have never done this before, but we thought that it was a good touch just to, more than the chart as well, to explain how it should be read and understood. Besides that, we decided that we were not going to stick with the text, so that we made an interactive just to tell a very important piece of the story, with another narrative or platform which we call scrollytelling, or I understand it is called scrollytelling, where we explain how they use public funds to pay a private jet for him and his family to make a trip to Disneyland in Orlando, Florida. And we explain and visualize, eventually you will see the visualization of the exact model of the airplane. This is the quote of the airplane we got access to. And they paid it with public funds and made this trip to Disneyland, where we showed how it was going to be made with his family. So this in mobile can be read with easily. Sorry, I have a dog that is kind of crazy. This is a picture of him that his sister-in-law published on Facebook, which helped show that the trip was made, and we started like challenge following the clues to find out how this trip was made and who were the people that were on the plane, and to compare if the date of the quote of the private flight was the exact date of the photo that was published on Facebook. And we ended up concluding that this trip was made, and the people who were flying from El Salvador to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So this was another way to show. A big conclusion for us was that, for example, this piece of the story, not the text, but this was after 2 weeks of publishing the whole interactive. People that follow us on Facebook tend to come more here rather than the text in the site. But people who follow us from Twitter tend to come more to the text rather than to this interactive. So that was helpful for us to conclude that it is important that our quality journalism is told in different narratives as well. Besides this, just to end with this example, we made a simulation in a piece of infographic of the presidential desk, where we gave like a small, short pieces of information about this trip and the expenses he made in terms of his passport, the purchases made with his credit card, the bank accounts, the gadgets bought in luxury stores in Florida, etc. And finally, we also made something that we call transparency scanning all the documents, where we showed the receipts that can be, I think it's still loading, that can be seen, for example, just to filter for the expenses made by the president, or the expenses made with his credit card, or just the purchases for gadgets, or the loans that he had with his bank, or the alimony he paid to his former partner couple. So when we made this filter, for example, just to say the expenses he made with his credit card, we had this filter, and people was able to see the amounts and to see the exactly scan of the receipt. For this was the less viewed piece of the story of the whole interactive, but we thought that it was important to transparent the documents, because our team of journalists, which were 4 journalists, a designer, and a developer, made lots of days and nights in our office scanning a lot of documents. So basically, this will be our example. Thank you very much.
In case you're watching this back, Carlos, thank you very much for your contribution and for this amazing example. I would like now to let Enrique Gasteosoro talk. He's from Nicaragua and he works for the media Confidencial, and he's going to tell us more about the context in Nicaragua.
Thank you, Maxime. Hello, thank you for joining. My name is Enrique and I'm the general manager for Confidencial. Like Carlos, I'm also not a journalist, but Confidencial is one of Nicaragua's emblematic independent media outlets. Our newsroom has been arbitrarily occupied and confiscated by the police since December 2018, but our journalism has carried on and evolved with the support of our audiences, our allies, and our peers. Our weekly print magazine and television program were founded in the mid-1990s during a golden age for Nicaraguan journalism following the devastating civil war of the 1980s. During the first 15 years, our work was completely sustained by subscriptions and ads. In 2007, Daniel Ortega returned to power. He previously ruled Nicaragua during the catastrophic 1980s. And upon his return to power, structural conditions for journalism began to deteriorate rapidly. Among other things, the Ortega regime deployed a stigmatizing discourse against journalists, which was also adopted by its business sector cronies. This early warning sign was ignored by most Nicaraguan society. Much of public opinion approved of Ortega's rule, regardless of the democratic and institutional decay, due to seemingly robust economic growth. By 2017, Confidencial had lost ad revenue due to an increasingly hostile attitude from the regime and also from businesses that followed the regime, either because they shared the conviction that our scrutiny of their partnership was unwarranted, or because they feared different forms of retaliation if they appeared to support our work through ads. By then, we had established ourselves as the media outlet that decision makers of many sectors turned to, but a critical mass of the Nicaraguan public often ignored or even maligned quality journalism, regardless of the country's crumbling democratic and social fabric, which we successfully documented and explained. Much of the public was hypnotized by the economic growth that ultimately proved to be an unsustainable bubble. The Ortega regime triggered the country's most severe democratic, economic, and human rights crisis in 2 decades, responding with lethal brutality to peaceful protests against social security reforms in April 2018. This ongoing crisis, which has been compounded by Ortega's criminally negligent response to the COVID-19 pandemic, has resulted in a newfound recognition from most of Nicaraguan society of the importance of quality journalism. But the economy's freefall prevents this recognition from translating into increased support in the form of ads or subscriptions. Since the onset of this compounded crisis, Confidencial has adapted in every sense, from the organizational to the financial, the technological, and security measures, among others. In 2019, we successfully piloted our first effort to ask audiences for financial support in exchange for perks, such as ebooks, newsletters, and engagement with our newsroom. We received during that year more than 500 individual donations, which amounted to close to 5% of our total revenue. A couple of months ago, in the month of July, we launched our membership model, asking our most loyal readers to support our conviction that in a society as structurally unequal as Nicaragua, all people must have free and open access to reliable information and quality analysis. Members' support helps us keep our platforms free and open. Among other perks, members have access to collectible products and to the historical archive of our print magazine since the mid-1990s. I would like to share with you 3 key takeaways from our experience. The first is that our audience and our mission are at the heart of everything we do. This is what inspires our work. And it also inspires loyalty and solidarity from our audiences. It is the point of departure from which we decided to make public in this year our commitment to keep our platforms free and open without paywalls, and to design a membership model based on that and that can support that in the long term. The second key takeaway that I would like to share is that the way that we see ourselves really matters. We increasingly recognize ourselves as a social enterprise. Our work contributes to freedom of expression, press freedom, and access to information, which are fundamental rights that are inseparable from human flourishing. We understand that in order to contribute to empowering citizens and to stimulating public debate, it is not enough to produce quality journalism. We must go beyond. And we aspire for our membership program to become a community and a space where Nicaraguans can engage in constructive public debate. At the same time, they help us build a media outlet where audiences have an increasing sense, but most importantly, an increasing practice of ownership. This is the point of departure from which we dare to experiment with our models. This means our models in terms of journalism, in terms of sustainability, in terms of engagement, in terms of technology, in terms of the way we organize ourselves internally, in terms of our internal governance, our accountability, the way we collaborate with others within journalism, but also other sectors and the audience itself. We do leave much open to the collective and creative process of construction, destruction, and iteration that is innovation. But at the same time, we have ratified key decisions that define us as a media outlet. We are free and open to the public, and we seek to constantly evolve with our community. Launching our membership program this year has been a step in that direction, and we trust that our audiences will continue to walk with us. We're not alone. That's another key takeaway. Except for our December 16th, 2018 print edition, days after the police raided and confiscated our newsroom, the regime has never interrupted our work. Our resilience and our adaptability are rooted in the solidarity of our audiences, of our peers, of our allies, and also in our team's commitment with our mission, and perhaps most importantly, the trust that sources in a highly polarized and surveilled society continue to place in us. These and other living lessons drive our commitment to work not only for the development of our own outlet, but for the development of the independent media ecosystem in Nicaragua, of which we are a part as a whole. I want to conclude with this reflection, where each of us individually and all of us collectively, bigger than the social and contextual worlds that surround us. Ideas, words, cultures, laws, disciplines, myths, and institutions are products of our individual and collective minds. Informed citizens that question and scrutinize are better prepared to reimagine and rebuild at a structural level. Therein lies the true potential and the public value of journalism. In order to fulfill that quality, journalism, including us, must learn to evolve without depending on crisis as a trigger. And we must learn to fail fast, to mitigate the risks of radical experimentation, to try again, to fail better, and to repeat as needed. And that is what brings us to this conversation here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enrique. Now we're going to move to Alina Radu. Alina is from Moldova and she works for the news outlet Ziarul de Garda. I don't know if I pronounce it well. But yes, please, Alina, go on.
Thank you very much.
And let us know when you want the video that you sent us to play.
Let me introduce a bit and then we see the video. So I am working as a journalist in Moldova for almost 30 years. And 16 years ago, we created an investigative news outlet named Ziarul de Garda. We translate it like The Guardian. And we are doing investigative reporting since then. And we think to have a lot of success, like having best reporters in the country, many prizes. Some officials had to step down from the office because of our stories, and we consider it a big impact. Also, our community increased each year and every year. But working as a journalist in Moldova, as an investigative reporter in Moldova, or in any post-Soviet Union country means you have to think about Russia every day, and you have to do something to think about this problem that Russia brings to you. For now in Moldova, we are the most known newspaper, but the newspaper with the biggest circulation in this country, it is named The Country, for 30 years, is a newspaper named Komsomolskaya Pravda, which comes from Moscow, is written in Moscow, is published in Moscow, and it is just sent to Moldova where it is distributed. So this newspaper has bigger circulation than us. and then any newspaper in Moldova, and you can imagine what kind of content this newspaper has. And it is not only that, each citizen of Moldova, when he opens the TV set, he sees a huge list of Russian TV stations that come to their houses, telling them stories. So we are in this competition, and we try to do honest reporting, good reporting, ethical reporting. But then we understood we have two parts of the audiences. One part of the audience is those reader or those who watch TV but look analytically to everything and love the truth and love this fight with corruption. Moldova being among the poorest countries in Europe and among the most corrupt. And we have a part of the society who follow Komsomolskaya Pravda, Russian TV stations, and we can't blame them. Yes, they watch some, let's say, trash, disinformation, bad information, and not quality information, but they watch it for many years. They are captivated by something. I often ask people, why do you watch the TV station? They tell a lot of lies about European Union, about democracy, about human rights, about LGBT community, about anything, you know. And they say, but they have nice show. Do we manage to make nice show working so hard on corruption? I'm not sure. Now, just to have a little fun, I would like to show a video. If it is possible, maybe we watch the video, but I continue to speak so we don't lose time. It's a kind of funny story. You know, this year nobody managed to have a vacation, but Moldovan president managed to have many vacations. And every year he has many vacations. And when our reporters made a research, they found out that he had most expensive vacations that are possible on years, but his salary doesn't allow that. So the money he declared are not covering all these vacations during last 10 years because during last 10 years, he was a public official, not he's a president for the last 4 years, but then he worked in the government. So it was a kind of funny story. Yes, people from everywhere had watched it, and it was a way to show more colorful our research. But it is not always like that. Very often we have to show documents, we have to show these things that are not so colorful. So what do we do and how do we come to that part of the public that want to see show, who want to see easy things, who want to maybe to follow these Russian channels because they show a lot of propaganda, but among them nice things to watch like different TV shows. This is a challenge for us. I understand that there are many creative ways, and I liked very much presentation of my colleagues Enrique and Carlos, but we are poor media. We don't make money. We don't manage to have as much money to pay, you know, creative people to come and to develop it. We have to deliver an investigative piece every week just to keep our audience together and to inform about corruption. So how can we do? What do we do in this, how to say, hostile medium? Because this media from Moscow polarizes a lot in Moldova, in Belarus, in Ukraine, in Georgia, in Armenia, in Azerbaijan. You know, you see everywhere conflicts and everywhere Russian politics is present. We have to do something for these people, for our people, for those who are not yet the audience of right media or of correct media or of ethical media. We have to regain these people back. So I am really looking for a solution, and I don't have a solution yet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alina, for your story. I would like now to bring in the designers. And I would like to start by inviting Cream on Chrome, so Martina, Yoon, and Jonas Althaus. They are a duo of designers based in Rotterdam in Netherlands. And please take the stage.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, it's been already very, very interesting to join this event and the last sessions. We are sharing our screen. We're Design Studio Cream on Chrome. We call ourselves interface designers and research designers. And with interface, we really mean, interfaces in a broader sense. So not only digitally, but also physical ones. For example, in this version, you could slide up and down with a physical trigger, an updating article that informs about the process of a political discourse.
So the slider is actually like a physical timeline.
And so that was a brief impression what we do. We were in conversation with Cynthia Membreno from Confidencial, that you already heard before, from Nicaragua. And we were, we heard from her about the police attack on their newsroom. And we were quite shocked to hear that, most of the archive was confiscated and is therefore, it's difficult to release it to the public. And as designers that worked with journalists before, we feel that especially in times of political crisis, it is helpful to revisit such reports of the past, because if we look at not only what has happened, but also what how it was reported on, the kind of meta story of journalism, then we can learn a lot about, or at least that's what we believe, and that we talked with Cynthia about, to how to inform why we end up in a certain situation, like a political crisis, for example, in Nicaragua. And as what you see here is, for example, a project where we had, again, a physical slider, and where we offered news consumers to take an active role into navigating between different snippets of information. How to make this knowledge of the past accessible, that's the question that is behind our designs. And because you don't want to list them all up, archive material in a list, you want to present them in a way that an audience can approach it and access it in a kind of attractive way.
So another quick example, Daniela mentioned it, I think, briefly already, working on a project called Newslider, where it's also working with an archive. It's the archive of the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision. So imagine you type in any kind of keyword, in this case, climate change, and then you get related keywords with it that come up most often. And you can see maybe over time also how often they're talked about. And so you get a bit of an impression of the media coverage and in relation to what associations. Similar to that, because we're also employing quite automated tools to analyze textual data. So there's also possibilities to highlight events that are similar, in this case, for instance, climate conferences, and see how the tone of voice was quite different or the content has shifted.
And we feel that focusing on keywords allows to explore developments on a level that also triggers people's memories about certain events. For example, yeah, for the project you saw before, we had a keyword that was "We can do it," "Wir schaffen das" from Angela Merkel, that every German citizen remembers immediately, but then and wants to know what we have to say about it, and then understands that during the 10 years that this phrase has been warmed up again and again in journalism, it has completely changed the meaning. So yeah, then the news consumer actually becomes a kind of news explorer through the tools that we hope to create with journalists. And
yeah, and similar with this climate change example in the slide that you're seeing. So I mean, what we could trace back, when was the word climate change talked about, when was maybe the word global warming talked about more, or acid rain, or different kind, or like heat waves, or environmental pollution, or ozone layers, etc. And what does it say about where the conversation went, and what does it say about the changing terminology maybe that was used to come with different associations?
Yeah, so with Confidencial, we learned that they also have a great interest to digitalize and to make their archive accessible. And so we hope to collaborate with them in the future on a small trial kind of example case to focus on a specific topic, like the political crisis since 2018, and to also find again maybe keywords that were used by in this case maybe to really try to understand what the opposition wants, and how the opposition is united, or how the opposition is also driven apart by certain terms, and
how it was portrayed in the media and how it changed.
And yeah, that could be really something we hope to collaborate on. And yeah,
and interesting, as Cynthia mentioned, that from their weekly newspapers that were confiscated, that's what's left is everything from 2017 up until now. So that's not reaching very far back into history, but to cover the political crisis and see how it has evolved in the last 2 years. That could be quite interesting, because if even that memory gets lost, then it would be very hard for citizens and members to, as Jonas said, understand how they found themselves there, and to also prove to the public or the police that this has been said and this did happen. And yeah, that's 5 minutes, I think.
Ready for questions afterwards.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I'm going to change a little bit the order. I will first go, and then I will invite Alice to join afterwards. As a designer, I also joined one of the conversation, and in the room where we were, I was talking with Carlos, who we saw the video before, and with Marcela. And essentially during our conversation, and with Daniela, sorry. Essentially during our conversation, we focused on the quite remarkable example of Carlos. And we developed a lot on the necessity to address narrative in a different way, so that different audience can relate to it, and that it can reach out to different sensibilities, which most traditional media don't do. They apply a sort of formula of writing the article, publishing it, which is something that has been accepted through time. So we really started to think about like different ways to distribute the information, and to reach out for people who don't necessarily have the willing to read. But later on, we engaged in a conversation with Enrique also, and I'm going to quote you, if I may. But at some point you said like that the real problem is not how do we get people to care, but how how do we as journalists understand how people care about something, and why do they care about something, and how as journalists can you react on this. And I thought it was really interesting because you're saying that you were talking about how the journalists are really looking into like the investigation themselves, but that they don't necessarily relate to their audience. And they don't necessarily try to understand what people are interested in. And I think thinking back about what the designer can do in the context of journalism or working with journalists, that's actually something where designers are naturally looking at the audience, because culturally, designers are looking at the users, if I use a bit a dirty word. And so their focus is on the receiving end of a certain process, looking at how the shaping of this process will create a desired effect on the target, which is the user. And in that sense, when the designer works with a journalist, it becomes complementary, because we have someone focusing on the elaboration of the content, but someone reflecting on the elaboration of the process to relate to this end user. But then you added something else, which sort of came to contradict also, which I thought was interesting. And you say that it's maybe not about how do we tell the stories to the audience, but how do we deconstruct the myth about ourselves as journalists, which was really interesting because I thought it was shifting the questioning of how do we address a narrative to an audience, to how do we address our own narrative as institutions and as practitioners of journalists, which is something which is quite traditionally embedded into this objective approach, but is it something which is still relevant? And then you also questioned about like, how can we visualize better how athletes are organized in terms of people and processes? And altogether, these things that you talked about, I think are quite interesting, because as social designer, I like to see ourselves as outsider, as let's say professional outsiders, who we're good at stepping into something we don't know and at observing what's going on. And in that way, we're good to intervene in the structure and to question the processes, the relations that are going on in there, and eventually propose possible restructuration of these structures. Sorry. And indeed, because the newsroom itself is quite an old institution, I think it needs to have this fresh look upon of an outsider stepping in, looking at how people relate to each other and how they interact, and eventually reconsider how the journalists, for instance, interact with, let's say, the graphic designer or with the archivist, and see what changing those dynamics can create. And for this, I would like to share an example. I will share my screen. Yes. This is a project that I worked on. I was part of a multidisciplinary team, and it was in collaboration with Delo, who is a national newspaper in Slovenia, based in Ljubljana. And we were invited to talk about the problematic of generating a news and engagement with audience. But eventually, when we engaged with the newspaper and with the newsroom and with their structure, we realized that they were trying to follow trends or trying to follow general movement of addressing things to the audience, where in their archive they had the most extensive news archive of Slovenia, dating back to before the fall of Yugoslavia. So we thought like this actually is an incredible material that you can reactivate in the process of producing news. So we created this structure which can go around and which can be used to make podcasts or interviews or public conversation, where an elemental structure of the newsroom was totally being put on the side before. We bring it back on the stage, try to reactivate it, and so that it can generate new information by connecting like the past and the present. And of course, like it talks about archives, so it can be compared with Martina and Jonas, but I think it's doing it in a quite different way as well. Or at least in the process, the way we approached it was quite different. And that ends my intervention as a participant. I have to stop sharing. And before we go towards question, I would like to invite Alice. Alice Wong is a story designer, and she's based in Eindhoven in the Netherlands as well. And yes, Alice, please go on.
Hello, hi everyone. I think I should better start sharing my screen and let me see. Is it okay? Share computer sound. Can I share it? Yes. Okay. Can you see me? Can you see the screen as well? And can you see my script? Also see my script, so I'm gonna hide it. Oh my God, that's embarrassing. Okay. So hi everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm a story designer. I'm based in Eindhoven. I also teach at the Design Academy Eindhoven in the Master of Information Design as a specialist tutor. And so what I do as a designer, I translate research findings into multi-perspective stories. So my question usually rooted in understanding how reality is shaped. So simply put, I'm here to question who told you so. I do not only consider nonfiction as truth, but also the fictional narrative that people believe as well. There are truths, but there are not just one. And I would like to create stories that has no black and white, no simple single conclusion, but instead it stimulates the audience to be critical and ask many different questions. And so to summarize what I have done previously, I have done, this is the latest project that I've made. It's called The Charged Dream. It's now currently exhibiting at Lithium show at the Het Nieuw Institute. I usually edit with found footage material together, present research in different contexts. You can also watch it on missaliceone.com. But I guess Maxime would like me to show this picture. Right. It is, this is called Us and Them, and I put together all the different found materials together, which is about how stereotypes works and how Asian is being perceived by the American popular culture. And like you can see the formats and the story that is always coherent, and I'm more focusing on how to let the story that speaks for itself. So I always consider the contents that go first, and then the medium that I will consider after. It's also quite a risky approach because while you're working, you don't know where you're actually going. So yeah, this is my website. Maybe I should close it. I don't have visuals, but I'm going to summarize what I have been in the panel with meeting with different journalists. Oh, but I can't. Sorry, I'm not very tech. I don't know how to close that. Okay, so we're back to here. To summarize what I have taken from the last two meetings, it is that journalism is facing different challenges. For example, journalists have spent months on investigation of corruption in their own countries, and it costs time and money and energy, not only on investigation, but also on defending their rights and the freedom of speech. And the second problem that I get out is like the polarizations of the news from Alina, journalist. It's hard to establish a productive dialogue and getting to neutralize the information, because when the news are polarized and there's no common ground, there's no discussion to be allowed to be established, right? And then the third problem is the access of information, where the government are limiting the internet connection. Not only that, but also controlling the access, the censorships, and then to go on internet to access information. So here in the topic that we're in the theme with me and Alina and Rick, three of us are in this group of like how to tell new ways of storytelling. So with these issues presenting to us, I wonder what we can do and how shall we start? So in this collaboration between journalism and design, to me, I personally don't like to see it as like, oh, journalist, here we create the content and the designers that comes in and just to design the layouts or the formats. Instead, I would like to work closely together, hand in hand, thinking with each other about the what, why, and the how. Not only about thinking the solutions, but also maybe understanding what is beyond the symptoms, the cause of the things that are happening. So no one should be blamed for this information not getting through, I think. So easily we also like, yeah, the journalism is getting bad, they get clickbait, and then the audience are having short attention span. I think it's just the circumstances that all just come together nowadays, and it unfold and result in this way now. It's just like what I asked journalists, what information that you would like to know more or you keep curious about. And then some of them might say like, actually, I don't feel like I need to know more, or I am already knowing a lot. And for example, if I'm talking about to the audience, like, why don't you question? And it's like, yeah, it's too much to question. It's too much to know. Everything is under our fingertips. We always bombard with notifications, alerts, and this and that. So everyone is in own shoes. It's very difficult situations. Also, we can do what we can. And if the information that is interesting enough or curious enough, like for the people, they will go and to look for it. I don't think we lack looking for information. Like everything is easy to reachable. Everything is just under our fingertips. So it's just circumstances and it's how it unfolds. So perhaps here we as designers and journalists and media and everyone who is professional in their own fields, maybe we can take a little step back. Not presenting as if we have gotten everything figured out. And the problem is not just changing the format. And if newspaper doesn't work, maybe it's not about changing into a podcast, sorry, but maybe it's still one, because I think it's still a very one-way direction. Shifting the medium and the format, maybe it's not really the cause, I think. And we can come with a lot of more interesting approach, especially with this new time when a lot of resource is available for us. So we should allow this gray area for the audience to raise questions and be curious of what's going on. I think it's the most important thing is how it evokes their curiosity. And if they're interested in such area, everything is under our fingertips, they can easily look up and think further or dive deeper. Like, for example, conspiracy theory. People can find it out themselves. We don't have journalism on that, but they do have information. They will, if they're interested, they will be nosy. They will be their own journalist. They will fish now. So I think we have to shift our position here a bit. And how we assist them to be curious, to be understanding what's happening around and enhance this comprehension, and increase the level of comprehension of information. So how can we create this gray area, this spectrum of, to provide a spectrum of information instead of pointing out like, okay, I know this is a bad guy. I know he is good. And I know this is worked on. I know this doesn't work. Maybe we can shift it a little bit because I don't think we lack this kind of position of journalism. But instead we should provide another way of storytelling. like yeah, how we can increase the audience that have these different sensitivities towards information, and how we can experiment it in different ways, maybe online and offline, because I remember that there are some in other countries, maybe they have really limited access to internet. So let's say today we have already one video pre-recorded. It's just really happening like this. So in offline and online, how can we break free from the conventional one-way direction of communicating a story? So this is my what I summarize and what I think now. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alice. Before opening towards the question to the audience, I would like to invite the journalists to react also on what we just talked about. But just one note for the audience, there is a Q&A section on Zoom where you can ask questions. And for those of you who are following us either on Facebook Live or on YouTube, you can also put questions in the comment, and we have someone looking into this so they can relay it back to us on Zoom. But Enrique or Alina, would you like to react maybe on some of the things that you've heard now?
Yes, thank you very much for nice thoughts, and you feel a bit much better when you see that designers care about journalism and about all things happen, because sometimes we think we are on our own. But today I had seen a nice group of people who understand media, who understand the problems, and who really want to participate or to be part of the solution. I like the positivity of Alice saying we should not think that the truth is only one and the truth belongs to us. And she said it last week as well, or last time when we talked. And since then, I still think about how can we accept and change this behavior of journalists, maybe, because till now we know that fighting corruption is a part of our life, and this is the truth, and those who are corrupt should be blamed. But then, of course, we can't get the whole audience, because a part of the audience will watch something else, will not watch these hard corruption stories. Next year, Moldova has 30 years of existence, and many of Soviet Union, or most of Soviet Union, former Soviet Union countries have 30 years of existence. And I was looking at the web page of Alice, and I was starting to think about an installation, another piece of art, merging or joining journalism with art, showing to people what had happened during 30 years in Moldova, but maybe in Ukraine or Belarus or somewhere else. So it was a good session just to get ideas and to get food for thought.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. Just a reflection on our two previous meetings and on this session, on the basic, or again, the point of departure to why it's so valuable for us to be able to participate in this kind of space and to have these conversations about sort of questioning our own role as media outlets. This idea of many realities, not just one, or this conversation about how even without being conscious about it, one same media outlet itself may be, let's say, providing different kind of meanings to the same keywords, like our Crim and Chrome colleagues were mentioning. So I think that having this space with multiple disciplines where we can reflect on these difficult questions that are often just uncomfortable in our, and it's easy to leave them for later, given our day-to-day work. So I think that for me, it's been a wonderful experience to be able to have these conversations, to question these kind of often unquestioned premises about journalism, about our role in society, and also about the need for the journalistic process to go beyond just the newsroom and to include other disciplines. So I would leave it at that for now.
Yeah, thank you. We have one question that came up from Sophia Topi. I'm looking if we can bring her in the conversation because it's quite an extensive question. So maybe it's best if she asks it herself. I will unmute you, Sophia, and you can talk.
Hi, hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. I think I have a pretty complicated question, and I hope that it's not that abstract for you. I was thinking on this idea, I think Alice mentioned about one-way communicated story. So I was wondering what is the meta phase of reporting and what comes after disseminating information besides evoking the interest of the receiver? And how can we make productive use of reported facts? For example, how can we enable active reflection for values and social meanings from both sides, like reporter and receiver? Thank you.
Can you maybe elaborate on what you mean by the meta phase of reporting, just to clarify?
I think it could be summarized on what comes after the information is online, is public. How can we, for example, go beyond the reported facts, and how can we start an active discussion about what actually happened and what does it mean back on our society? Is this more clear?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
That's Alice, do you want to react on this, maybe?
I'm still thinking how to react, but I guess like, how can we do that? I don't really have an answer now. I think what we need is not to, I think the focus is how to establish like information, like forms of journalism. Maybe we should look beyond, like, instead of like a standing post or standing still of information that's informative, maybe we should move on to more something in between. We can also stir it in some feedback, but not like live streaming and people posting, I think, because it's like super fast. Maybe it's not really about like showing it into a lot of audience at the same time, but we can keep it small in different sizes. I don't have an answer now. That's why it's interesting to look into it like this now, I guess. Like, we don't have an answer now, but we have a goal and trying to experience something new. I don't know if I'm answering right, but I just don't know. What do you think, Maxime?
Yeah, I think it's actually a really good question. I also don't have an answer. But indeed, what's the afterlife of the news event once it's been published, and how do we relate to it? But I guess that's maybe something, and tell me if I'm wrong, but that Cream on Chrome is addressing with their 4D news space, where the narrative becomes a building block on which you elaborate the evolution and how it stretches through time. But indeed, it's something which is not, or at least from my knowledge, and then I would ask Alina and Enrique to correct me if I'm wrong, but it is something which is not really common to be used or explored or even thought about in the field of journalism.
Well, now I think about something. Like, I had a project before, which I have, because it was so difficult, so I gave up on that project, and I will react on it again. But that project was about leftover women. In the course of the research, I was really sure that I'm gonna make it as an interactive game, because I want the audience to participate and select through like what that character will experience. And then after a while, I think like, hey, who wants to be in this game? And it's so hard to program. I'm still figuring out a way. So instead I try a different way of like storytelling. But I think like, what if our information could be interactive? So instead of just going through like, okay, the more we search on certain things, the more we feed on that certain information to be more polarized. Could it be something else? Could it be like, if we search on certain keywords, could it be feedback, also the ingredients of it? I remember I had a friend who did information design and graduated earlier, and his name is Kai Wu Kaiju, and he's in Taiwan now. He designed this label. When Google search up in the, for example, when you search up earthquake, and then it pops up a lot of information in Google, right? Just image, for example. And then in the Google search engine, it will pops up the label. His design is so interesting because when you pick up a package, for example, a cereal package at the supermarket, you will see what are the ingredients, where it's from, how it's made of. But then for information itself, we don't have that ingredient label. So would it be also a way to address that, to instead of looking what comes along, instead of we can dive it back, trace back the source easily? So I don't know, there are so many different ways, because I don't think information is just linear. It's so much, it's so overlapping. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Alice. I think Daniele wanted to react also on the question from Sophia.
Yeah, really shortly. There are actually a lot of newspapers are already doing this. So just to fill you in on this, there are a lot of metrics that they use in dashboards, which they can obviously check which articles are really popular, which one aren't, and they can adjust titles just on the fly, actually. So during the day, a news cycle already adapts itself, titles are adapted, because the constant feedback of the audience is taken into account. So there is definitely attention to this, though I think we could come up with new means to do so. And we did a project last year that we called Follow This Issue, where we allowed users actually to use a smart widget that we positioned below an article, and they could push the button if they would like to know more about the article. And then they would need to contribute to that with either their knowledge or a micropayment. And if there were about 100 readers already using that smart widget, we could write a follow-up article. And that system is actually a really nice one, because not everyone has obviously the same interest, but you could cater much more based on personal interest and knowledge. And there are a lot of tools available to do that. And I think technology can be of great help in this, though we have to find the right balance in this to avoid that we make information too personal and that we sort of stimulate filter bubbles even more. But there is definitely a lot of work going on there. And I think it's a super interesting question to dive into a bit further, but there are definitely tools that are already doing this.
Thank you, Danielle. Alina or Enrique, did you maybe want to react on Sophia's question?
Well, I liked very much the idea of thinking about productive use of reporting. Thank you, Sophia. And I think we had done it always or many times. How do we follow it, or how do we understand that this is productive? When we see the real change, and the real change maybe is not that we published a story about corruption and the corrupt official was dismissed, but the change happened in the mind of the public, the education. How did they understand what is wrong? How did they understand to make pressure on the government or to ask questions about their taxes? So education and involvement of the public, of those who consume media, for me, it's the answer to about productive use of reporting.
Thank you, Alina. I think Enrique wanted to react also.
Yeah, so I've been reading Sophia's question, and the part that really stands out to me is how to enable active reflection for values in social meaning. And I think that even beyond just the journalism and reporter or receiver, I think this is a really general issue, right? I mean, to to what extent are people in any role in life really taking the time to stop and question and rethink things such as values and social meanings? So for me, the question that evokes in me is, so why are people so reluctant sometimes to question these things? Is it because they're abstract or they're difficult to deal with? But one hypothesis that I've come across and that I feel very drawn to is that there's an issue around how we all understand structural change. That's a problem. Maybe we all kind of expect, or we think in structures, or more than structures, we think in systems. So like the economic system, it's broken, but it's such a huge monolithic system. And the only way to change it or improve it is to replace it with a whole other system, but which system would be best? And that kind of takes you into a rabbit hole. And you know what? It's maybe easier and better for our sanity not to dwell on that too much. But perhaps if we change the way that we understand structural change, and we actually see that structural change happens in a fragmentary way, little bit by little bit, and that little changes over time are the ones that really have like this transcendental impact. So maybe one thing that journalism could try to do is to try to bring into the collective mind a different understanding of structural change, where it's fragmentary and it happens piece by piece, and it's not like this entire system that is replaced by a next entire system in its as a whole.
Yes, thank you, Enrique. Alice, you wanted to add something?
I was thinking like I may be mistaken the word reaction and reflection. So if Sophia is asking about reflection, then I would have something to say. I think for journalism, how can they like make people more actively in reflecting on the information? I think is to present the contradictions of it, to present the spectrum. This is called the contradiction. So the things that are not adding up together, but they can still be able to be followed. I think this is interesting. This is also one of the ways that how I construct my stories. When there are things that are still following and they're contradicting, then people start to like what I'm actually looking at, instead of like something that always means the black and white. I don't know. Yeah, this is what I have.
I want to add to that. What was quite interesting when we worked in 4D News, what we found was that, I mean, it started by looking at what were the historic developments and how did things lead up to the present moment, and also debunking that this moment might not be unprecedented. And similar things have happened in the different versions before. But what we were quite surprised when we did this research was that how different just within a couple of years, or even just within 3 years, the different slices of subjectivity are if you just lay like 2018, 2019, and 2020 next to each other, which is quite interesting. And also reacting to, information is not linear, and that's true, but time is, and the information is brought in a linear way. And even though, I mean, the events, they might repeat. And it's quite interesting then to see when are the moments where things take on a similar development. And that's, I think, a nice moment where the skills of historians and journalism could come together, because it seems as if journalists tend to, poke around and see where are similar things that happened and plot that next to each other, but a historian would understand the developments. And so that's quite interesting, something that we found.
Thank you very much. I think we're reaching the end of the event, so I will conclude. Well, first of all, I would like to thank everyone for joining us and for participating in the construct of this discussion. To give a bit of information, like the webinar will be for us quite a strong tool to go on in the collaboration and to build it up. It will form like basically the base of knowledge that we will use in the future steps. And if in the audience there are some people who are interested in becoming allies of the project or supporting in whatever way or engaging with us, I would like to invite you to go on the website of the Social Design Lobby. because this talk is part of an exhibition called the Social Design Lobby. And then you can become, you can engage and keep up to date. So if you join the lobby, then you can put in the message that it's especially related to this event. And then we will keep you updated on how things go on. And if we need some support, we can also involve you if you want to be involved. Thank you very much. There will be also, I need to make a little bit of PR. There will be another event from the Social Design Lobby. It will be on Wednesday at 5:30 also, and it will be about inclusivity in design. So still about how are we inclusive in social design practices. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.